Thank you again. Well, good morning. Back in the 70s when I was going through college, like a lot of people, I would just get a summer job, finding, just some way I could earn some more money for college. I paid about 75% of my way through college back when college was much more affordable. But the one summer I got a job at a go-kart track on the outskirts of Chicago where I lived. I was affectionately called the bouncer. I would basically time the session. Usually I think it was about 10 minutes or something like that, so I'd run a stopwatch, and then as the time was up, I'd wave people off the track into the pit, so to speak. And I enjoyed it. I was outdoors, built some nice friendships with the guys who worked there. There was one guy who was a cashier, but he was also one of the mechanics on the go-karts. We had a couple other mechanics who just kind of keep everything up to date and gassed up and make sure the course was cool. In the last few weeks, before I was getting ready to go to college, the owner said that I could work overtime. So I worked overtime, put in a lot of extra hours, some 16-hour days, but I thought, great, earning more money for college. Then on the last day, when it was the evening, because I remember it was getting dark, and the owner was there with another guy who I didn't recognize, and say, can we talk to you? And, they're heading off to the car, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Maybe they're going to take me out for a drink. And instead, they turned to me and said, we know you've been stealing from this place, so fess up. Well, I hadn't been stealing from the place, and I was like, no, I haven't been stealing from the place. Would you be willing to take a lie detector test? Yeah, sure, I'd do. Well, in the coming weeks, I found out that they weren't going to pay me for the last few weeks. Turned out to be about $750 in 19. I looked this up on the internet yesterday. It would be worth about $3,300, in today's dollars. So took some steps that I could take. Had a nice conversation with an attorney. Said, look, for this amount we can't really. But he did suggest this, this other place we could go for a hearing, and so did that. But essentially, I never got paid by the guy. So I just started to really cop an attitude. I'm going to return to this story a little bit later, but the attitude that I copped was a bit of a problem, because here I'm thinking, okay, I'm a good man or a good young man, always honest, and this is what I get. And so carrying that attitude was not particularly healthy. And that's the interesting thing, is how, here Unity started in 1889 and started talking about, that our thoughts, our beliefs, our basic assumptions about the world, our attitudes, affect the way the world responds to us. It also affects our own health. Certain mental attitudes that people assumed were just fine aren't fine, at least not for us, because it is detrimental to what we experience in the world. Some attitudes energize, others deplete. There's there's an attitude of what's in it for me that isn't very healthy. There's this attitude that the world owes me something, or people just kind of walk around with that, almost that, that chip on the shoulder, that you owe me something, or this situation owes me something, and it's not a healthy attitude to have. So let me be clear. I'm not talking about a business transaction or a loan or a mortgage. I mean, if we come to an agreement with someone and say, okay, they'll loan me money for a specified amount of time and I'll pay it back, that's fine. It's more just that consistent attitude. You owe me for this. And it's a perennial attitude that comes from our false personality or ego. And a person keeps an inner ledger of what this person is owed. Now, of course, they never discuss this with other people. It's kind of in their own mind. It's like, you owe me for this, you owe me for that. And it doesn't need to just be money. It can be attitude. And I think how many young men have gotten into trouble because they're told that someone is disrespecting them. And so you end up with fistfights or worse. What about love, appreciation from other people, attention? These are all things that a lot of people feel that they're owed and can stir up a challenge in their lives. And then, of course, go broader. not only individuals, but about organizations, companies, governments, society in general, the whole world. Now, of course, a person who has this attitude often completely ignores what they owe other people, what is possible that there might be some implied agreements in the reverse. When we're in this state of mind, we have this delusion that we're handing out justice. We're fighting for justice. Of course, it's justice defined by a person who has that attitude. And the challenge with that is that it chokes off the flow of our vital energies. It blocks us being able to actually experience happiness. A person will feel sorry for himself. And then suddenly, health challenges surface, or other challenges in their life surface. Symptoms appear. The past seems sad, but suddenly the future seems even more sad. Oddly, or I guess I shouldn't say oddly, you'd kind of expect it that Jesus actually had something to say about this. In the Gospel of Matthew, 18th chapter, 23rd verse, Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. When he began the reckoning, one was brought before the king who owed him the equivalent in today's society of $160 million. As the man could not pay, his king ordered that he be sold, that his wife and children be sold, and that all he had be sold so that some sort of payment could be made. But the servant fell on his knees, imploring him, 'Lord, have patience with me. I will pay you everything.' And the Lord felt compassion. And out of pity for him, the Lord of that servant released him and forgave him all his debt, wiped it clean. But that same servant went out and came upon one of his fellow servants who owed him the equivalent in today's society of $6,000. He seized his fellow servant by the throat and said, 'Pay me what you owe.' So his fellow servant fell down and besought him, 'Have patience with me, and I will pay you everything.' But the first servant refused. He put him in debtor's prison until he could pay his debt. When the other servants saw what had taken place, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported it to their king about all had taken place. The Lord summoned him and said to him, 'You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you besought me. And should you not have mercy on your fellow servant, as I have mercy on you?' In anger, his Lord delivered him to the jailers till he should pay all his debt. And Jesus then said, 'So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart.'" So Jesus actually advocates the opposite of the "you owe me" kind of an attitude. In fact, the parable suggests that the person's imprisoned for the rest of their life. And yeah, the person's imprisoned for the rest of their life if they're carrying that kind of an attitude. It's a prison of the mind. It's a prison of that attitude. There's another Bible passage. In fact, it's part of one of the most repeated prayers in the world, and that's our Lord's Prayer. In Matthew chapter 6 and Luke chapter 11, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." Or, of course, in the Catholic translation, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." Similar sort of a thing. Jesus is expressing an infallible law of mind that we need to dissolve negative attitudes and embrace positive ones. We understand that what goes around comes around. Whatever energy we put out is going to come back to us multiplied. So are we putting out a positive energy or a negative energy? The late Reverend Eric Butterworth wrote many books, but his one book, Concentric Perspective, was about this, the fact that we need to live from within out, that we are indeed already spiritual beings having a human experience. And he writes, "Having dealt with a cross-section of humanity over half a century, I've come to the conclusion that there are people and that they can be divided into two groups, takers and givers. Takers believe that life will always be the sum total of what they can get from the world. They are forever thinking, get, get, get. They plan and scheme ways to get what they want in money, love, happiness, and the goods of all kinds. But no matter what they get, they will never know peace or security or fulfillment. Givers, on the other hand, are convinced that life is for giving. Their subtle motivations are always concentric, thus focused on giving themselves away in love, service, and all the many ways that they can invest themselves. It has been said that our life is God's gift to us. What we do with our gift, and what it is that we do with our gift when we are freely investing in creative living and giving, is important. At this point, we are not thinking of giving as a philanthropic gesture or monetary contribution to a church or other organization. Giving is an aspect of God inherent in all life, like the process of inhaling and exhaling. There is an inexorable cycle of receiving, giving, giving. The concentric perspective helps us to realize that giving involves inner receiving and that giving is actually a giving away to the inner flow. The dynamics of giving is so much a part of one's being, one of one's I am, that sense of identity with the divine, that one must get in sync with the receiving, giving, receiving flow, or they'll stagnate. What I've discovered is that when I did finally shift my attitude to one of recognizing, just being able to give out, it was an incredible shift for me. I'll have Duncan put up the first slide. So instead of having that attitude of what's in it for me, suddenly coming up with the question, what's in it from me? What can I give? If I'm putting out a positive flow, if I'm allowing my prayerful energy to be able to create in the world, what I find is other things are also created in concert with me. So let's just take a moment. Be willing to take on that persona, that one. The world owes me a living, or the world, you owe me something. I mean, in myself, I feel, almost this heaviness that comes in my heart, and I automatically start to frown. There's a heavy feeling. So let's dissolve and release all of that. But then take the attitude of, what's in it from me? What do I owe other people? What do I have to give? If my life is a gift from God, and I'm seeing God in other people, then they're seeing the God or the divine in me. And we're a blessing to each other. So earlier I told you of my experience with the go-kart track. I never did get the money. I did discover that the cashier was indeed stealing, from the go-kart track, and he, and in a conversation I had with him by phone, he told me, no, I told them you weren't involved. It was just me, and they went after me and another guy who worked there, so we must have been in on it. Finally, though, at school, my counselor suggested I go talk to the financial aid office, and they found a way to make up the difference. That I could get that extra $750, like I say, about $3,300 in today's thing. So suddenly it was like, something that I thought was lost was suddenly found in a way. It came through a different channel, and that's the way the world works. And you put out the energy, it doesn't necessarily return to the back. It's, instead of paying it back, you pay it forward. You're willing to just I look at. And of course, my dad passed away last year. He gave much more to me than I've ever given to him, but I'm able to pay it forward to other people. And that's the way it is. Just put the energy out. Don't worry about where it's going to come back to you. Just know it's going to come back to you. Duncan, go ahead and put up the next slide. This is a great affirmation I got from the late Reverend Ed Rabel. Taking in your own mind, when you are facing some sort of adversity or whatever, just say, you owe me nothing. My faith in God generates all my good. You owe me nothing. My faith in God generates all my good. So let's affirm that together. You owe me nothing. My faith in God generates all my good. So that shift in attitude really just helped me shift my whole life, my whole worldview. I owe you everything. What can I do to help you? Within reason. If I can't help a person, I can't help a person. But maybe I know somebody who can. Just our willingness to kind of admit what our deep-seated inner needs are. It can be very healthy in just being able to, oh yeah, okay, well, let's find a way for you to be able to get what it is that you need. So turning to a person or a situation, an employer, an enemy, a society, a world, a politician, be willing to just let go of that angry energy or that heavy energy. One of Eric Butterworth's other quotes that I love is, "The world does not owe you a living, but the universe does owe you a living." We draw it from within. It comes through us. That's the whole idea of meditation, getting centered again and recognizing, wow, yeah, I'm in the flow. And so by putting out the flow, that flow multiplies in my life and in everybody else's life that I touch. Suddenly we're seeing a more positive world when we do this. And yeah, sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But, as Martin Luther King said, the arc of justice, the arc of the humanity always bends towards justice. So if we release the negativity, it dissolves. If we let go of things that we don't necessarily want to let go of, release it, bless it, know that here again, in this divine economy, nothing goes to waste, nothing is lost. There is this law of divine compensation. So if you think you've lost something or something's been stolen from you or that you're owed something, if you can release that attitude and say, it's okay, I know it's going to come back through some other channel in my life. Nothing is ever lost. The universe takes good care of me, and it will take good care of you. So Duncan, put up the slide. I know this is already in your bulletin, but this week's takeaways. So in the coming week, look at your thoughts, your beliefs, your attitudes, your basic assumptions about the way things should be and the way people should be in your life or such situations. Instead of asking what's in it for me, ask what's in it from me. What can I give to make this situation better? Or what can I give to be helpful, to be kind, to do something for someone, like say the whole pay it forward movement, the idea of just doing something for the heck of doing it. You hear like somebody at Starbucks through the drive-through will, give a person extra bucks, just pay for the coffee for the next people behind me, and you'll hear it'll be going on and on and on and on. That's the way of putting out good, positive energy in the world. Seeing somebody who looks troubled, saying, just give them some attention today. So, and then of course, whatever we focus on expands. So if we're putting out a good energy, that energy will come back. Again, from the concentric perspective by Eric Butterworth. When you discover the wonder of giving, you may well wonder how you could have lived so long any other way. It is the key that makes spiritual truth work. It opens the door to the good you've been seeking, and that gives life an added glow. It can be one of the great discoveries of your life. When you become a committed giver, you could no more go back to the old way than you could return to life in prehistoric times. There is a new world waiting for you, a new level of life open to you, and a new experience of the dynamism of truth that you have been experiencing. Let me show you a man who embraced this concept in our closing video story by Steve Hartman of the CBS Evening News.